Alright, hello YouTube and welcome to today's Gems of War video. In this video I have for you my scouting report for Khaziel week that begins on February 26, 2024. Khaziel's right near the northeast corner of the map, halfway between Glacial Peaks and Stormheim. It is predominantly dwarfs. It's also an Earth Kingdom with an armor bonus, which is going to make a lot of sense later. Its arcane trait stone is the deep trait stone, which is solid brown. It is also the only kingdom where you can get this particular arcane trait stone during explore. So if this is Magram Woods and for some reason you are farming this trait stone, I recommend that you get that farming done now. Or do it after Khaziel week because this will not be available. Khaziel's maximum power is currently 26, and during Khaziel week it will increase to 27. As far as the kingdom level, I recommend that you get it to level 15 and then leave it there. Why do I recommend leaving it at 15 and completely forgetting about it? Well, there are two Earth Kingdoms that have an attack bonus. Those are Black Hawk and Draxum. Draxum's the one I'm currently taking to level 20. And there's a lot. Draxum, in my opinion, is a much better kingdom than Khaziel, even though Draxum's maximum power is much less. Draxum is also a dwarf kingdom. Its faction is much harder than Khaziel's faction, which means it will take more advantage of getting from 15 to 20, stuff like that. You get the idea. If between these two, you're going to pick Draxum unless you're not paying attention. Now, if you only want to take kingdoms to level 20, that you can also take the power to 30. The two Earth Kingdoms that is possible for is both Broken Spire and Drifting Sands. So pick one of those two. Both of them are pretty decent. They're definitely better than Khaziel. Okay, we're going to do the core 4 and the 4 more. Hopefully this is going to be the last time I'm going to be covering a epic team that could basically change as soon as the week begins, because this is the last one that has never had a week where the epic trials have never taken place. So anyway, let's take a look at the core 4, and I'm going to give you kind of a yes or no for each one in case this changes as far as whether to max it out now or wait. So we've got the Deep Borer first. This is a rare troop, and it destroys a column and creates 9 brown gems and creates a certain amount of armor. It gains bonus blue mana from blue gem matches, which fortunately it uses. Actually a pretty cheap troop as far as mana cost is concerned. Its reduction of damage from skulls is 25%. That sounds good, but it's not real. But when you look at some of the other troops in Khaziel, that's almost on the low end. It does have fortitude, but so do a lot of other troops in Khaziel. So it's an okay troop. It's pretty cheap, and that's the only reason to max it out is because. Speaking of cheap, we've also got the Excavator, another rare troop. The Excavator destroys a column, creates 5 red gems boosted by brown gems destroyed at a ratio of ×2. It has a bunch of traits, none of which are particularly necessary. Fortitude's nice. See Fortitude a lot in this video. Rocky Death is pretty much useless if your hero is also in the same party and using the Rune Priest class. And I'll show you why later, but you'll get you. But this is another troop. If he falls out of the epic team, then just leave him alone. Now let's get to some really good troops, starting with the Rock Troll. Rock Troll doubles the number of brown on the board. I think they meant to say brown gems on the board, then creates 3 brown gems. It reduces damage from skulls by 50%. That's typical for trolls. And yeah, trolls are usually pretty good, no matter where they're from or no matter what their spell is, because their spells are pretty consistent. So I would recommend, if you have Rock Troll, to level him up right away. Anyway, let's move on to King Highforge. Odds are, if you've been paying attention during the class trials, you have seen this guy before and maybe have come to detest him because you knock out some of his dwarves and then he casts a spell and the dwarves come right back. So, the best part about King Highforge is actually his third trait. All dwarf allies start with 50% mana. His spell, of course, is pretty good too. He stuns the last 2 enemies and deals a certain amount of damage to them, boosted by allied dwarves at a ratio of ×6, and then summons the random dwarf. So if you want to use him, you will need to have a lot of dwarfs maxed out. But once you have that, you can kind of use him to just kind of cycle through and maybe win the game at some point. So anyway, that's the core 4 as they exist right now. I would say Deepborn Excavator, you're going to level them up and trait them just to get your power level up, but Rock Troll and King Highforge will actually be worth leveling up and using. So let's talk about the 4 more. Now you guys see a lot of support in this because there's really this is really what Khaziel is. There's a lot of dwarves. They make a lot of brown gems, make a lot of armor, and then what do? Some of them do damage to one opponent, some do splash damage, and so forth. But it's I mean, honestly, just if you want to use dwarfs, just use Draxium. It's a much better kingdom. You can kind of put the 2 kingdoms together if you just need to do dwarf only king. You get the idea. I'm not gonna try not to rant too much about this because this is not a kingdom that I think is worth. I think this is gonna be a tough kingdom of the week to get through, at least for me anyway. So Apothecary transforms a selected mana color to brown and cleanses all allies. I'm highlighting this troop if only for the spell that cleanses all allies. If you're an early player and you haven't gotten to the underworld yet, but you want to make progress in the dungeon, Apothecary is a decent troop to get. She is ultra rare, so you will probably get her at some point as you go through your glory chests. She is immune to stun, among other things, because of fortitude, and that's what makes this particular troop good. You can basically cast the Stone Draught, and it will make a lot of brown, but it will also cleanse all of your troops, getting rid of all the effects from most of the traps that you might encounter. Eventually, you'll replace Apothecary with Queen Beatrix, but you can only get Queen Beatrix once you've gotten to the underworld. So, between now and then, if you still want to play the dungeon and you don't want to wait for Queen Beatrix, this is a decent substitute. And that's the biggest reason to use Apothecary. Runesmith gives an ally 35 attack and armor. Well, the 35 is essentially magic +1. And it's boosted by red gems at a ratio of 3:1, which is okay. Gains bonus red mana from red gem matches. Get the same fortitude that we see everywhere else. If you can boost your attack and then do skull damage, that might be a good way to actually use this. Good luck making skulls, though. You'll need a weapon outside of Khaziel to make that happen, or some troop outside of Khaziel. But an okay idea. Probably not. Very situational, I guess. Gimlet Stormbrew. You've got an empowered troop right here. Starts battles with full mana. Great, right? Transforms all green gems to brown and rages and gives a certain amount of life to the first ally. Again, setting yourself up to do skull damage if you can actually get a troop at the top of your lineup that will actually do it. Yeah. Anyway, moving right along, we're now going to talk about the mythics. Now, we have 4 mythics to choose from. I'm going to recommend Darksmith Drenza. And the reason I'm going to recommend her is because you can craft her in the Soulforge at any time you want. So she's not available at just at one random week of the year. You can get her whenever you want. Your Soulforge does need to be at level 19 because you'll need to craft her weapon first. She does require a crazy amount of celestial trait stones. I believe it is 40. But she doesn't require anything else that is insanely crazy, like 4,000 diamonds. So you can craft her, and she'll do this spell, and she has these traits. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is that she will check the box that will allow you to get Khaziel to power level 20 and potentially beyond. And then you can worry about the other 3 later. If I really have to subtract her from my rankings and then just pick someone else, I might go with Ares, if only because Ares does a random amount of damage to the first enemy, which is actually reasonably good, I suppose. But it's not a dwarf, which means it's not going to help you during the class trials. But I would say Darksmith Drenza, and just randomly get the other 3. The other 3, I doubt you're really going to use them all that much. Even Stonehammer, with its reduction of damage from skulls by 80%, what does he really do? Look at the spell. Is this what you want at the top of your lineup? Deep breath. I can do this. And get through this without whining all the time. Okay, let's go on to the weapons. Right now, there are 14 total weapons, which is exactly the number of weapons you would need to get this kingdom eventually to power level 30, but you don't have to worry about that right now. But let's talk about some of the weapons that you can get. So Grudge Keeper is probably going to be in the Soulforge. Grudge Keeper does a certain amount of damage to an enemy boosted by Khaziel allies at a ratio of ×6. Then creates a mix of 6 red and brown gems for each Khaziel ally. It barriers itself and blesses itself, so decent upgrades. Doesn't use brown though. All that brown that you're making is not going to help this particular weapon. So, hooray. I don't know. You could, the Dark Hammer is a weapon that you're going to have to make anyway. Once you get to power your Soulforge to level 19, you'll get a one-time only recipe to craft this weapon. And that's what's going to help you get Darksmith Drenza, so you kind of have to do it. But once you've gotten your Soulforge to level 19, you can craft this whenever you want. You don't have to do it during Khaziel week. There are some really good weapons. I'm sure some of you have noticed the Anvil of Might, and even more of you have probably noticed the Mountain Crusher. But I believe that you get both of these weapons for free anyway as you increase your Brown Mastery. Now, there is one weapon, and I don't know if this is going to be in the Soulforge or whether it's another one you get for free. Worn Peace. Keep an eye out on this as you get to the Soulforge. It deals a certain amount of damage to all enemies and gives 2 attack to all allies. And it silences the first enemy. As far as Khaziel weapons go, it's part brown, so it's actually gonna benefit from all the brown that you're gonna be making. This might be as good as it gets, to be honest. But it may not be saying much. But if War and Peace is craftable on the Soul Forge, definitely look for that particular one. Aside from that, the faction weapon that will be available during Faction Assault is Emperina's Tooth. Deals a certain amount of damage to the last enemy, then either gains an extra turn or summons a random kobold. Summoning a random kobold doesn't sound particularly good, but there's not as many of them, so you don't have to worry about leveling up every potential dwarf. You could just level up every potential kobold and spend a lot less headache. You get the idea. So I don't have this weapon yet, so I can't really show you the upgrades. But 47, but magic damage to the last enemy is an okay idea. Anyway, let's move on to the class weapon. There's not much to say about the class weapon. It deals deals a certain amount of damage, splash damage, to an enemy. My brain is hurting just looking at Khaziel. And it explodes a random gem for every brown ally and enemy, and it stuns the first enemy, and it's fine, I guess. Doom Sledge is also going to be available. It's the only doomed weapon from Khaziel. It definitely outperforms the Rune Forger if you happen to get it. It does heavy splash damage to an enemy +4 per tempering level. Stuns all brown enemies, cleanses all brown allies, and yeah. And explodes 4 gems. So it's not probably your first choice for a brown doomed weapon. Might not even be your second choice. Might not even be your third choice, but looking for Khaziel weapons, that might be at least an option. So let's take a look at the Rune Priest class. Remember when I was talking about the Excavator and why you won't particularly need him if you have your hero with the Rune Priest class? Well, Rune Priest class has Summon a Dust Storm when an enemy dies, which means you don't have to summon the storm twice. The third trait is okay. All Dwarven allies gain 2 life and attack on 4 or 5 gem matches. The talent trees have the Stone Tree, which is going to give you a lot of bonuses for brown mana. And yeah, it's fine. It's not the best brown bonus class in the game, but you will get this early. So if you are still going around the map trying to finish all the kingdom quests and you have this one and you want to boost on brown mana, then why not use it? Because once you get some other really good brown classes, you won't use this. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I have to say about the Rune Priest class. Just take a quick look at the pets. The Kingdom pet, of course, is the Shallow Borer. So you get the Starry Shallow Borer as part of the Epic class trials. You also have the Baby Beard, which boosts dwarf teams. And you have the Rocky, which boosts your Earth teams, if you need to boost Earth teams. And the Kobold Kitty is the Emperina faction pet. So now we're going to talk a little bit about Emperina and an hourly thing to pick up real quick. And now let's go to the Underworld. So Emperina is kind of mirrored in roughly the same area that you'd see it on the overworld map, right between Glacial Peaks' faction and Stormheim's faction. Emperina is a brown-yellow restriction, so there should be a few good teams that'll get you through Tuesday's faction assault. And overall, my understanding, even though I haven't gotten to anywhere close to level 500, Emperina I don't think is that part of a kingdom to get through purification. Could be wrong, but for now it seems like it's a pretty decent one. You get a legendary troop that is able to resummon at will, essentially. Let me just pull it while I'm talking. It hasn't had its expansion yet, but yeah, this legendary troop's pretty good. Gives a certain amount of life to all allies, summons a random kobold, and either gains an extra turn or summons another kobold. It's useful in purification and probably not as useful elsewhere. We've got some kobolds behind her to do stuff, and it's like I said, it's not. It's a little random, but it's okay. And speaking of random, our guild event is going to be a world event, and the restrictions for world events can be just about anything, so not much to talk about there. I've already been talking way too much about Khaziel, so I'm just going to leave it here. If you enjoyed this video for whatever reason, please leave a like. Subscribe to this channel. Follow me on Twitch. Leave a comment below. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you in the next video.